Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm making pita bread. I've made this recipe a few times before, and it's not my recipe. It's actually from a website called The Mediterranean Dish, and I will put a link in the description to it. It's really easy to do. It doesn't take a lot of ingredients, and it doesn't take a lot of time, which is quite nice. So if you've never made pita bread before, you wanted to try it, try this recipe. Like I said, it's really, really easy. And if an idiot like me can do it, anybody can do it, really. Now, their recipe calls for, where the hell is my, there it is. 2 teaspoons of yeast. Well, you need 1 cup of lukewarm water, which I already have ready to go. You need 2 teaspoons of yeast. Just your regular active dry yeast is good. And you need a half a teaspoon of sugar. Now you want to mix the yeast and the, excuse me, you want to mix the yeast and the sugar in the water until it's fully dissolved. And then we're going to add a half a cup of flour and make a yeast sponge. And you let that sit for 15 minutes or so until it's bubbly. The recipe in total calls for 3 cups of flour. So it's a half a cup for the yeast part. Then you'll add about 2 cups later on, or a little bit more. And you want to keep anywhere from a quarter of a cup to a half a cup while you're rolling and making the pita bread itself. And you can use, according to the recipe, and I have tried it with both, you can use just regular all-purpose flour, and you can also do a mix of all-purpose and whole wheat flour. I haven't tried with like 100% whole wheat flour, and I may do that yet. But today's recipe, I'm going to be doing it with the half and half white and half whole wheat. Yeah. There we go. Now I had a half a cup of flour all ready to go. So you just put that in, whisk it together. Make sure all the flour bits are incorporated. Okay, that's good. Now, we're just going to let this sit for about 15 minutes in a warm place, uncovered. And when we come back, it may not look bubbly on the surface, but when you touch it, it goes, you can see all the little bubbles that have formed. So we'll come back in about 15 minutes, and then we'll go to step 2. So now you can see it is bubbly. See, there's little bubbles there. At this point, we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Anywhere from 1 to 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. I do 1 teaspoon because if I want salty bread, I will put salted butter on it. And I always put my kosher salt through there because I like it finer. And you're going to add in most of the flour. You have to keep about, like I said, a quarter to a half a cup aside. I already have that amount put aside, so this is the flour I'm adding in. And now we mix. It says to mix until you make what she calls a shaggy mass, which I guess is really just another way of saying a messy looking dough. The spoon pretty much isn't going to do the rest of this, but you are supposed to knead what's in the bowl to get all those pieces together. I'm not the world's best kneader. I used to watch my mom when I was a kid make bread and buns, homemade bread and buns, and she could just knead like there was no tomorrow. I never quite got the knack of it, but I try my best. Some people make it look so effortless. Okay, dough is a little bit sticky, which is normal for this. And you want to take some of your reserved flour, just a little bit, not a whole lot. And you're going to knead this just for a few minutes, not a long time. It's a beautiful soft dough. Knead this until it's nice and smooth. Your dough will be a little sticky, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But if you feel you need a little bit, just a touch, you don't need a lot of flour on your surface. So I'm going to let that set for about 10 minutes before we go on. I have a thing for dough. And we'll be back in 10 minutes. After we let our dough rest for that 10-minute time frame, just need to knead it for a little bit again. And if you find that it's a little moist, a touch of flour again on your surface, just till it's nice and smooth. Just like that. Next step is you're going to put it in a bowl which has been oiled with some olive oil. I'm just making sure it's been redistributed because that bowl has been sitting for most of this time. There. You put your dough in there and turn it around so it gets covered in the oil. There you go. And then you're going to take some plastic wrap. I'm just reusing the wrap I've been using for my previous pita bread making experiences. Just put that on there. Make sure it's not even sticking anymore, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Don't you worry about it. It's all good. And then you take a cloth, cover that, put it in a warm place. It's cold in the house a little bit, so I turn my oven on to heat up the area a bit. And that will sit now for about an hour till it's double in size. And then we'll be back, and then we'll be getting down to the nitty-gritty. So we'll see in a bit. Okay, so now our dough has risen to about double its size. So you just give it a slight punch down the center, and then you're going to take it out of the bowl. And then what you got to do now is cut it into, the recipe says 7 or 8 equal pieces, so I do 8 relatively equal pieces. Am I supposed to shape these into balls? Yes. It's a little bit of a knead, but it's okay because these will rest again for another 10 minutes after we do this step. The dough is sticky, but you don't really need to add any flour here. You're just shaping. There's always one smaller one. So cover those up. We're going to let them rest for 10 minutes. And in the meantime, I am going to reset my oven to 480 degrees. The website says 475 degrees. You can do this either in the oven or on a cast iron skillet. The first good batch that I did in the skillet. They didn't seem to puff up like a pita bread is supposed to. So the second batch I did in the oven, and it did much better. They really puffed nice and high, but they looked bland in color. Like, I don't think they're supposed to look dark or anything, but I think they could have had a touch more color to them. So I'm just actually going to turn my oven up a bit because I don't think my oven registers the correct temperatures. Like if you set it to 350, I think it's actually 325. I haven't actually tested that, but I usually find I have to cook things a little bit longer if I put it at the temperature stated in recipes. So this one I'm going to try at 480 degrees on I'll just open up my oven here, cookie sheet. And the cookie sheet has to be hot, which is why I'm leaving it in there right now. And another thing I'm going to try differently too, and I'll just reopen this again, whatever. it said the middle rack, but I found my middle rack, maybe it wasn't high enough. So I'm putting it up here, and I should actually just put that up there now. There. There. So, but the website did say that whether you do it on the skillet or on a pan in the oven, the pan, and the skillet, whatever you decide to use, they need to be hot before you cook the pita breads. So we'll let this all do what it's supposed to do, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. So our little balls have rested for 10 minutes now, and it's time to shape them into, wow, imperfect circles, I call them. That extra flour that you didn't use for the doughs, used here. The Mediterranean dish site said, I think they were supposed to be like 8 inches in diameter, 8 or 9 inches in diameter, 1/4 of an inch thick. Mine aren't that big. I don't really care if they're huge. I just like a nice, good size piece of bread. But there you go. It's like a nice, that's a half decent size pita. It's probably about 6 inches, I would think. Maybe a little smaller. Now, my oven is nice and hot. The pan is in there. Where's my thing? So, now we open this up. You're going to put 2 pitas on your pan. Don't burn yourself. And then you're going to close. Her site said 2 minutes on one side, and then you flip them over and do another minute on the other side. But I have found with my oven, and it may be different because I've turned up the temperature now, but you know, we'll always adjust the times after I do this first one. I'll make a judgment call then. But right now, I'll do it for 2:15 on one side, and then I will do for 1.5 minutes on the other. And if I think it's too much, then I will go down to the 2 and the 1 minute. We'll just stop it. There we go. So look how those guys puffed up. I'll just bring it out to show you. Like, look at that. Okay, enough with the experimenting on the first one here. Put that back in. We'll do this one for 1 minute and 30 seconds. The minute is up for the first batch. I'll bring that out. They feel nice and crusty. They puffed up beautifully. Let's get our second batch in so we don't lose our heat though. But I think I will stick with the 2 minutes and 30 seconds for each one on the first go, and then 1.5 minutes on the other one. So I'm going to continue baking these things, and I'll show you what they look like when I'm all done. And there we have it, the last batch of pita. Of course, there's always the one that's going to be the rebel, right? And not fluff up like the rest of them. Oh well. I think all in all, it was pretty successful. Beautiful, fluffy pita bread. Except for you. You're looking like almost an unleavened flatbread. But I still love it anyway. Anyway, thanks for hanging out in my kitchen today. Do try the recipe though. It's relatively easy, and it's just over, I think, 2 hours really from start to finish. Maybe it could be faster for other people if you're more, adept in the kitchen, but it's a really quick, easy recipe to make, and the bread is nice and delicious too. Like, let's open up this guy. Ooh, it's still freaking hot. Oh, look at that, though. See, there's a little pocket there. Anyway, until next time, have a great night.